Hey, what's up, guys? I just completed the first of the second batch of Freebirds. It hasn't been easy, guys. I've run into so many extremely rare problems, like one right after another. It's all good though. It's all behind us now. Uh, but it's really got me bogged down. I am so far behind in work. Anyway, let's just take a look at this one, and I'll go over some things that I've been telling you guys that I've been meaning to make a video about. So we're going to go over some of the things with this new Freebird, how to use it, uh, if you have a problem with it, what to do, just things like that. All right, let's go take a look at it. Alrighty, so here we have it. And this customer got a black one, as you can see. He did not order this barrel. I was just looking at it and I said, man, that barrel looks awfully long, and I swear he wanted a medium barrel. Well, this barrel is actually 600 millimeters. I'm going to have to put a 500 millimeter barrel on it for him. Something about these barrels are nothing that I've ever seen before. The 500 and 600 millimeter barrels have a different thread size for the muzzle. This is a 12 by 1 thread. And the flash hiders, they're just printed. They're pretty delicate. So just be careful with them when you get them. No, they only sent flash hiders for the 400 millimeter barrels, which is the older style barrel that has smaller oddball threads. So I'm not even really sure. I think it's like 9 millimeters or something like that. Anyway, I asked them about that, and they said, yeah, we just forgot to send them in with your order. So whoever gets the medium or long barrels, 500 or 600 millimeter barrels, I will send your flash hider when they arrive. So I'm sorry, but you're going to have to wait on your flash hider. And like I say, they're pretty delicate. I don't really know much about the airgun world, but that seems to be a much more standardized size 12 by 1 than the older style. So there's probably all kinds of things you can screw on the end of these barrels. This is the battery compartment I showed you in a previous video. This is just a prototype. As you can see, it's pretty rough, but I wasn't sure if they were going to send several of these with everything or not. I don't even know if they've sent them to this day or not. I think he's going to be sending me 4 or 5 of them. Not really even sure, but that just goes on like so. And this is the battery it was designed for. And this is a 5S battery pack. And even with this, because there's no room built in it for the wires, and it would be next to impossible to run the wires through there for the board, I'm going to go ahead and put the socket for all of them right here. And that way, in case you did have that, you would still have to plug it into that socket with an extension cord. Now, this is the same way I have mine set up, when I just run a long extension cord to my battery pack, which I keep in the backpack with my air bottle. If you need an extension cord, I can make one for you. Just let me know how long you're going to want it. You can run them right through the coil of your air hose, These guns are not designed to run the micro bore straight hoses. What happens is the inner diameter of them is just too small, and it'll choke them out, because these things use a lot of air, especially when they're running at the higher fire rates. So let's get into the fire rates, and let me explain to you how this thing works. This is your BB door, and you just open that up and fill it up with BBs. I did not put a PVC shield there for the wires. The wires are just bare inside there, but that gives you extra capacity for maybe 250 more BBs. This is how you turn it on. One of the things that I've been wrestling with over the past several days is these power switches. What happened was, in the previous Freebirds, we had 5, I think they're 18300s or 350, something like that, but we had 5 cells in the buffer tube, and we didn't have to run an external battery pack. But that proved out to be kind of dangerous, so I stopped making them. And the issue is that you've got your batteries in here. Well, in between each of the cells, they're not physically connected, they're just touching. So you have a little bit of loss between each of the cells. And between each of the cells, you're going to create heat. Now, normally that's, perfectly fine. It's not going to cause any problems. But another thing that it does is it actually reduces the current going to your power switch, actually to the entire board, because it has to run through that switch. Now, they work great, fine, whatever. They do not get as much power as with a battery pack, though. So with the battery pack, it gives it more amperage and more voltage get to the circuit board, and it has to travel through this power switch. So what that was doing is it was causing these power switches to stick in the on position. If some of you, anybody who's followed my channel for any amount of time, probably already knows that these power switches have been the bane of my existence for a long time. Especially ever since I started to try to run battery packs. So what would happen is, I don't know if it's going to do it this time or not, but they've been hanging in the on position with the added power. Okay, it did do it this time. So every time that was happening, I'd have to go in there if I couldn't manually free it, and you sometimes replace the switch. I think this is the 3rd switch that I put on this one. So I found a workaround. I said, well, let me just take apart one of these switches and see how it's made. Maybe I can take it apart from the outside of the gun to do something to it. I don't know. So I took it apart and I saw how it was made, and then I said, well, I wonder if you just do this and it'll work. And it does. So when you turn it in the off position, the contacts are not free. So you just have to give it a little extra push to turn it off. So now let's get into the function of this thing and why it works and how it works. This first button is your burst settings, and you'll see 3 dotted lines, which indicates full auto, and it will go from 1 all the way up to 10. So if I were to pull the trigger right now, it would just fire 5 times. Unless I pulled my finger off before it could shoot 5 times. So it's a burst setting. And you can choose it 1 to 10 and then to full auto. This second button, it chooses your rate of fire. I don't know how many fire rates are on these because years ago when I was trying to get 4,000 rounds a minute to work, the board that I had all of the lower fire rates from Sergey's 2K board, and it had the higher rates that I asked him for in like 2,500, 3,000, 3,500, and 4,000. So I remember it had 15 rates of fire, and it was really annoying because I was only really focused on maybe 3,000, 3,500, and 4,000. Just trying to get there. So every time that I would cycle through, if I hit the button one too many times, I would have to go through it all over again. Sometimes I'd even have to do that 2 or 3 times. So it was just a real nuisance. So I said, Sergey, for these production boards, please just make it 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, and 4,000. And that satisfied me greatly. And I also thought it was a much more tactical way to go about things, because if you pick up the gun and say it's on like one of the really low fire rates, but you needed it to be on a higher one, with that version board, the lowest it would be on was 1,000. So it was more for a tactical thing, and because I was whining to Sergey about it. So with these 5K boards, what he did was he included all of the lower rates, which don't really bother me that much anymore. Plus the everything we had up to 4,000, and then 4,500, and then 5,000. So we'll go through those rates, see what we have. Not sure how well that says 5K. It probably looks it might be hard to see on the camera, but it says 5K. Let me turn on this light and see if it makes a difference. Okay, so 470, 600, 800, 1,000, 1,500, and that says 1.5K in case you get confused. 2,000, 2,500, 3,000, 3,500, 4,000, 4,500, and 5,000, however many fire rates that is. I shoot these things differently than you guys do. I only get them, I make sure that they fire smoothly on the highest rate, and then I turn them loose to you. So, this is your pulse width duration button. What pulse width duration is it is a millisecond timing, which allows current to flow to your solenoid for that amount of time per shot. So I think these start at 3 milliseconds, and they're in half millisecond increments. And we'll go back over that in just a minute. And they go all the way up to 11. So 11 and 3. You're never going to use 11 unless you just want to make more noise, because above 7, anything above 7, you're just wasting air. That's just how it is. The gun will get louder, but you won't gain any velocity. And it won't work as you go up in the fire ranges, let's say you're at 5K, this is how I set them. I'll start at 5,000 rounds a minute, and then I'll start at the lowest pulse setting, and I'll work my way up, and maybe I can get it up to 5. Just hypothetically, this will vary with whatever pressure you're running, and your barrel length also plays a part in it. So let's say I can get it to 5, and then I try to do it at 5.5, and it just runs like crap. Well, bring it back down to 5, and then I will, that is set for that fire rate. Previous board versions were just defaulted to 7 milliseconds. Every time you cycled to a different fire rate, it would be preset on 7 milliseconds. With these boards, you can choose your pulse rate for each fire rate. So the problem with having it default to 7 milliseconds every time you cycle to it is, let's say you've got a fire rate like 5K. Well, 7 milliseconds is more than likely going to interfere with your timing, and you're probably not going to get past 5.5 milliseconds for 5K on a good day, regardless of everything else. It's just solenoid timing and valve timing and all sorts of different variables. So everybody's is going to be a little bit different. And the higher fire rates you go, the less pulse you're going to be able to put into each shot. So with 4K, maybe you can get 6. I doubt it. I usually get 5 out of 4K. And like I say, it depends on your barrel length and your voltage. But our voltage is going to be pretty constant because we're all going to have to run these battery packs, which I do not supply. You're going to, again, this is the one that I'm running, but it'll run fine on any 5S battery pack. I did buy another, I can't remember, I think that might have been a 6S pack at 30C, and it did fine at 30C, but if you try to put a 6S pack on here, I don't know. You might not be able to get your power button unstuck. I just figured out this trick, and I don't know if it'll work with 6S. But I do run 6S on my gun, but I know that that is an issue. So if you want to run 6S, try that. I'm not going to be held responsible for fixing your power switch. When it gets stuck like that, and you can't turn it off, you unplug the battery. Well, it worked that time, but if it didn't work, you would still have a charge in your main capacitor, and your board would still be lit up. If you were hooked up to your air and you pulled the trigger, it would fire until that capacitor was discharged, and it would fire dBs. So that's the danger of not having a viable power switch. These are also serialized with the Sapper Custom logo laser engraved on the valve body. However, several of the valve bodies were damaged in transit. They got scuffed up. A customer of mine, future customer of mine, happens to do anodizing, and he offered to take it on to repair them. And I said, okay, well, the only thing that's important to me is if you can save the serial numbers, that would be great. So I'm sending off several of them to him, and they're going to get anodized. Now, they're all going to be a little bit different, possibly. I don't know. I'm giving him carte blanche, free reign over what he wants to do with them. So when those are available, I will do another video and let y'all see what we have And like I say, they'll be one of a kind, and I'll let y'all choose whichever ones you want. And we might consider doing it for all of them in the future. Uh, I'm really leaning that way because there could be some added benefits physically to anodizing the valve bodies as well. One more thing before we go shoot this is each one of them will come with a matching front sight designed to work with an AR-15 carry handle. I do not supply the AR-15 carry handles, but a mil-spec style handle is what it's designed to work with for those of you who like iron sights. So we're just a hair over 1,000 psi on our nitrogen, and I'm gonna try to do this one-handed. It's about empty. And that was with a pulse of 3, I believe. Yeah, I'm sorry I'm not more creative about the target, but yeah, you'll just have to get one and figure out what you want to shoot with it. Later.